right, everybody, welcome back to Resiliency Rounds. This is Resiliency Rounds with Jeremy and Anish, and we are in book three of the Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and we have taken the long way through the ethics. So far, we have discussed what is it to have an eye toward the good life, to try to be happy with the entirety of that life. That means sometimes you have to do things that you may not be happy doing while you are doing it, but it adds to something bigger and greater and gets you this kind of satisfaction or eudaimonia, which is what we all are going toward. And so the path to eudaimonia is, it's a direction. That direction is the direction of virtue. Virtue is the right things to do. There are cardinal virtues, that is justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom. Of those, uh, temperance and courage are related to the appetitive elements of the mind, and the other two, that is justice and wisdom, are related to the intellectual elements of the mind. And of the two appetitive virtues, we discussed courage the last time, which is the mean between two extremes. As with all virtues, according to Aristotle, they're a mean between two extremes. And courage was the mean between someone who is rash and is fearless, doesn't have an understanding of fear, and someone who's a coward, that is, has an exaggerated experience or understanding of fear. And a brave man is in the middle of that, has the appropriate understanding of fear, however acts fearlessly and appears calm during the action, as opposed to someone who's rash. It does not have any fear, acts fearlessly, but is loud or boisterous in action, and a coward who is experiences a lot of fear, more than what is due, acts fearlessly, or even fails to act, and even appears fearless. Appears fearful, acts fearfully, and appears fearful. I'm sorry. And so, say, as with courage, which mostly deals with objects that are evil, one's response to objects that are evil or cause pain. Temperance deals with things that deal with pleasure. So, after courage comes temperance, and and what Aristotle is talking about here when he says pleasure, this is a very specific type of pleasure, a pleasure that is different from the pleasure one feels when one is in company of good friends, or when one is in company of or one is experiencing good music, or admiring a painting, or reading a good book. There's a certain feeling that one gets that is more of an intellectual pleasure, a pleasure of the soul, as they say. That's not what temperance deals with. Temperance deals with like the bodily pleasure, so the pleasure of the senses. And if someone is indulging in these bodily pleasures more so than one should, one is considered to be self-indulgent. The other extreme of this is doesn't really exist in humans, which is having a complete disregard for pleasure, bodily pleasures. It'll be a strange thing to be completely insensate towards any sort of pleasure. More so, not just insensate, but kind of abhorrent towards pleasure, bodily pleasures of any sort. It is, and not coming from an intellectual sense, but truly from the appetitive side of one's mind, disliking things like food, or water, nourishment in one sense, and reproduction and things like that. It's a very strange state, and it would be a very highly pathologic state, and so it doesn't exist. M- Most humans, just like animals, would lie on the other side of this extreme. That's on the self-indulgent side. Each virtue has these extremes, and there's an extreme that most humans are predicated to. Like courage is most humans are predicated towards cowardice, then rashness. There are some though who go towards rashness, and the aim is to know what is one's predilection, and then start making small steps as you move toward the other extreme. Somewhere along the way you come upon the virtue and you stick there. That's what end up happening. Same thing is true for temperance as well. Most of us find ourselves in the self-indulgent part of this equation, and there are some small steps that one can take as we are moving towards temperance. So that is temperance. Jeremy, what are your thoughts so far listening to that?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. It makes sense that there isn't really the opposite of of uh, indulgence, right? Is
Yeah.
right. Because I'm thinking that when you said that, and you mentioned it, you said pathological. That's a pathology there. There's that sounds like sociopathic in some ways, of no feeling, no emotion, no desire, and yet I'm still think that that a sociopath has indulgences, and so
Right.
I think that it's really about finding, and to your point, these like steps to managing that. And when we actually, so if we look at this from adult development theory, right, like as a child, you're learning how to moderate this in some degree,
Yeah.
some better than others. And this really, to be really around the mean of temperance, is to have really stable internal structures. You need to, and that emerges with maturity.
Hmm.
I mean, how many of us went through our college years with some, overindulgences in sex, drugs, rock and roll, all of the above. And this is, and then people sometimes just grow out of it. And I think that they replace it, like the college years, with other things.
Right.
But interestingly enough, it just popped up, an article popped up right before we jumped on today, that was about a woman who continued to try to stop drinking, and she apparently has tried everything from AA to inpatient to rehabs,
Mm.
um, and then started taking Ozempic, and it modified that for her.
Mm.
So it's interesting, like, because that gets to a point where like alcoholism's different, because all of a sudden now you're addicted to something, so that you have, you're losing control of your ability um, to have temperance around that, and but there are now things out there that help with gambling, with drugs, with smoking, with alcohol addiction and things like that. So I mean, those are extremes, but still, like that comes from, well, I mean, it's overindulging, but then it becomes an addiction.
Yes. Yes. You said a lot of very pertinent things here. So one of the things that Aristotle talks about directly here is Aristotelian parenting or uh, childhood development. He talks about that at the end of this particular paragraph or chapter on temperance. He talks about the fact that these this self-indulgent behavior is most evident in children. And before we talk about Aristotelian theory on what development could look like, I would like to just spend a few moments on what he's talking about here when it comes to bodily pleasures.
Yes. Yeah.
Seems obvious,
Yeah.
but it is it is not um, it is not the appreciation. So we look at all the senses, right? There is sight, there is sound, there are smells.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is not what he's talking about when it comes to bodily pleasures. The Some folks could spend a lot of time enjoying nature. As a matter of fact, they may give it more importance than maybe other things in their life. Being in nature could be very important to them,
Uh-huh.
but that is not self-indulgent behavior according to Aristotle. I mean, that probably comes under some other
Sure.
problem. If you're gonna relinquish your duties as a family member, as a citizen, and you're spending all time in nature, honestly, that will not be considered to be a vice necessarily, but it's definitely not self-indulgence. Now, same thing can be said about listening to music or enjoying music.
Yeah.
Now, that's not vice either. Same thing can be said about enjoying certain fragrances or whatever. Like, say someone is a sommelier, or understands, like, from coffee to whiskey to wines. Like, they're very good at telling the difference between the two, and they make their money doing that. That's not necessarily considered a vice.
Uh-huh.
Now, what could be a vice when it comes to odor, to fragrances, is if one is uh, is it smells wines and great food and is desirous of that. That's what is getting them so caught up in the act of the fragrance. It's not necessarily, it's not a refined form of trying to differentiate between the wines. And people do it, right, as a profession. This is like, you love drinking alcohol so much that you love the smell of alcohol.
Right.
It is almost like, it's like a brutish behavior. But even then, it is not the act of smelling the wine or the great food that is the self-indulgent part. It is what comes after. It is because you're going to imbibe the alcohol. It's the fact that you're going to eat the food. So he gives the example of, like, if a wolf smells an elk,
Yeah.
it's not the smell of the elk that gets it excited. It's the fact that it's going to eat the elk. So it comes down to the most animal instinct here is the satiation of the natural urge to eat, right? Now, in nature, there is no excess eating. There's a deficiency, and you solve and you fill the deficiency, and that's your natural appetite. That's what
Right.
most animals have. The difference between men and most animals is the similarity first is the fact that we also have in us this animal instinct of when we are hungry or we are thirsty, the sight of food and drink, or the smell of food and drink, creates in us an urge. And when if one eats or partakes in that, till the natural ability till the natural appetite is fulfilled, there is no vice in that. That's natural. We share that with animals. That comes from a part of us that we don't control. You can starve yourself. I mean, yes, you can, but that is not necessarily a it's not necessarily a virtue. Starving yourself in the presence of food is not virtue, really. It's a different form of whatever, but it's not virtue. But indulging in food way beyond the natural appetite aspect of this is, like, if sorry, go ahead. Looks like you have a
I was just
question.
going to say, so like gluttonous behavior is
Exactly.
you're speaking of. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right. So that's what he's talking about. Being so desirous of good food or drink that it far exceeds natural capacity and becomes, in fact, the center point of one's life. There are folks like that, you know,
Yeah.
and we've all come across that. Like, and they come in all various shapes and forms. There are folks who will do everything to go eat at the latest restaurant. They'll eat several times over, and they talk about, yes. So that now you can take that to one whole extreme, and have such gluttonous behavior that you can imagine it could be almost abhorrent.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I've never really seen that in my personal life, but I'm sure the examples of that have existed, and you can see, proclivities towards that. But that excess of desire to go beyond the natural appetite when it comes to taste, especially taste, right? The taste in the mouth, the act of swallowing, and all of that. Like that's what he's talking about as one form of self-indulgence, and the other one then is sexual intercourse and pleasure. So food and drink and sexual intercourse are very specific to this. That's what he's talking about here when it comes to temperance, and there are extremes in this as well. And temperance, the thing about temperance is it is sorry, the thing about self-indulgence is it is bodily pleasures, primarily touch and taste. These are the characteristics that he gives out related to certain parts of the body, either more than normal or in the for the wrong thing or in the wrong way. So these are all qualifications. You don't have to meet all of them. You can meet any one of them, and one would be a self-indulgent person, right? And so temperance then is the opposite of that, where you partake in these bodily pleasures. You're not supposed to be insensate towards it. You participate in it, but you do it in the normal way. You do it it's the right thing at the right time and in the right way. Now, the thing about the Aristotelian temperance, and that's one of the critiques of Aristotle. Like he ends up using this a lot, where he says um, that that he doesn't tell you exactly how. He just uses words like "do it in the right way," or you know you're temperate when you do the things a temperate man does. Right? He doesn't really outline what it is. He just says it is it. This is it. And the reason he does this is because he goes about, he explains himself early on in the Nicomachean. He says that you cannot talk about the specifics when it comes to things like this. Otherwise, you'll just get caught in a rabbit hole and you'll have to keep going down the rabbit hole and you'll never get anywhere.
Right.
Like one has a general sense of what this is, and we have to stick with the general sense of it. So he says, what does he say? Yeah, the things that are pleasant, that make for health or for a good condition, he will desire those things moderately and as he should, and also other pleasant things if they are not a hindrance to these ends or contrary to what is noble or beyond his means. For he who neglects these conditions loves such pleasures more than they are worth. But the temperate man is not that sort of person, but the sort of person that the right rule prescribes.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of things here. I think in just in our day to day life that we can ask ourselves. There are examples of this. If you're indulging in these pleasures, and people are spending on it way beyond their means, that is also self indulgence.
Sure. Sure.
What do you think about that?
I mean, so if it starts to impact you in a negative way, then it's indulgence, right? So spending, or if it's impacting, I mean, when it comes to drinking and or sex, even, like if it's interrupting your ability to get through your day to doing what you're supposed to be doing, um, because you're drinking too much at night, or because you're having sex during the day when you're supposed to be working. Like these are overindulgences that are kind of decent indicators that, hey, this is impacting the people around me and myself, my ability to live decently.
Absolutely. I mean, if you and it's and sometimes these things are come in the way of honor as well, right? This kind of behavior, the self-indulgent behavior, is what you see in people that are not worthy of respect or honor, right? I mean, I think with this whole Epstein thing, I mean, this is kind of coming out right in the open, right? Um, where you see people with in power who have all of this money and all of this influence and everything, and but they participate in the most carnal of behavior. It's like the most brutish behavior, the most animalistic behavior, despite having everything. One could be refined and move to a position where, you could be a better human being. You have all the opportunity to do so, but no, but they tend to participate in the most. They're slaves to their own appetite. This is the tyrannical constitution that the republic talks about, where you have this multi-headed monster, the multi-headed monster of pleasure. Pleasure comes in multitudinous different forms, right? And this multi-headed monster is much bigger and much more powerful than the honor-seeking part of your brain, which is akin to a lion. And the lion is much more stronger and more powerful than the smallest part of your mind, that is the rational principle, the one that is the soul, the one that has the that can distinguish between good and evil, right or wrong. It's the guiding principle in your mind as a human. The multi-headed monster is many times larger, many times stronger. And the right constitution, the philosophical constitution, even though the rational element is the smallest part, it actually rules over the honor seeking element, and the honor seeking element keeps the appetitive element in check. Because one has the right constitution, one believes these that in good and bad, right and wrong, and understands that, has an eye toward that. They are honorable, because not because they're honor seeking, it's because they know that they need to do the right things. And that honor then directs the appetite, saying that no, I cannot indulge too much in this. I have to keep this multi-headed hydra monster in check, right? And what you notice, though, what you see is the flipping of that in tyranny. Tyranny, the multi-headed monster is in control, and it will take over honor. The only reason to have honor is so that you can continue to feed this multi-headed monster, and the rational principle is kept in a cage somewhere. It's completely flipped on his head. That's what we are seeing.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, the image of the cartoons with the angel on one side and the devil on the other,
Yeah.
uh, right, is a great example. But I'm curious, and this might get us off topic, but we can, if we choose not to talk about, but what Aristotle's view would be today. So power and money creates access, and and what you're saying is like it's this this monster is in control, right? Like the honor is just not there. One could argue that to become a billionaire, you're not living a virtuous life. And when we get into the next into book 4, which is cataloging what you need to do to be socially acceptable, right? And it's not.
Right.
These are things where like you have so much access to overindulge in everything, and maybe you
Absolutely.
don't decide to drink all the fine wines all the time, or
Right.
but maybe it's, well, I can have sex with whoever I want whenever I want,
Right.
and so it's just interesting that if we look at society today and ask ourselves like, what's enough, and what's enough to like live a good life, what's enough to live nobly, to live virtuously, and then at what point do people have too much power, too much money, too much control, too much influence, where all of a sudden I actually think it makes it more difficult for the angel on your shoulder to give to listen to that one. I mean, that's just my opinion, but
Yeah. Yeah. Look, accumulating that amount of wealth and power means that one is not temperate, one is not liberal, right? One is on the extremes. That's how
Right.
you get there.
Yeah.
Beyond a certain amount, beyond a certain point, that money comes at the cost of the common good.
Mhm.
And so once you have achieved that kind of wealth, you've strayed far from the path because you're no longer in the direction of the common good. In the direction of the common good, and we'll talk about liberality next, and it lays it out there, right? How money and what does it mean to have money, and how much money does one need, and what is in fact a good man. But the point here is that it's actually not a hydra, it's a chimera. He calls it the chimera. The chimera is the multi-headed monster
Chimera.
of appetite. But that tyrannical constitution exists in people who we see most of the time in the world, who have achieved these levels of wealth and power and influence, have this tyrannical constitution inside of them. And because of our social media culture and things like that, these are the folks that become the paragons of achievement in life. And you have young people trying to follow in their steps, and they want to be billionaires by the time they're 20, and they do it by finding the most depraved ways of getting there, like all of this stuff, man. Have you heard of the stuff, the betting, the odds market, right? The what's it called, the poly market, and called Kalshi, and all the stuff where uh, I mean, these people have come up with ways. So, what is that? That is feeding again a very base instinct of risk taking that exists in humans. I mean, if you look at what's on the web, what makes money, it is dealing in sensationalization. It is dealing in vices, including pornography. I mean, generating fear. I mean, that's what it's all come down to. I mean, even if you look at what's available from the standpoint of um, like Amazon, right? It's about stuff. It's
Yep.
about fulfilling an urge,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
It doesn't show up. A pleasure of shopping doesn't show up here in Aristotelian virtues, because I don't think it existed. And now it's actually a vice. I mean, you could shop yourself into debt, and have all this stuff lying around, which is self-indulgent behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really need 50 articles of clothing? I don't know. Eh, Amazon definitely thinks you do. And
Yeah.
then all the from Grubhub to Uber Eats, it's all about just sit on your couch and get all sorts of food from everywhere. You have access to all of this food, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
If you had to cook it, you wouldn't cook it.
Yeah.
Just all you do.
Yeah.
So that, and now you can place bets on whether Iran is going to be attacked, or whether tariffs are going to be turned over, or you know what color Gatorade is going to be tossed on somebody. Come on, like
It's funny as you were. I had taken this note down, and then you brought it up. But this excess of desire, that social media is self-indulgence, and
yep.
so this technology age. I'm wondering if like we should be adding to like food, drink, intercourse, and technology. I don't know.
And tech,
Yeah.
social media,
Yeah.
likes, or whatever that thing is, right? Likes.
Mhm.
We have such slop in this world, and but I'll tell you, look, likes and videos are still not as dangerous. I mean, it probably is. Like I've heard enough of teenagers and especially young women having low self esteem and suicide and stuff related to this. But what is that? That again is borders on pornography. I mean, it's like it's visually appealing to men to see young women on Instagram. They have all sorts of these beauty filters in there, and that leads women to feel like they are not pretty, or I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, this none of this is a big secret. But all of this again is akin to what he's a bodily pleasure, which is like kind of like sex, right? I mean, you're not men are not looking at pretty women on Instagram just because they want to admire beauty. I mean, it all comes down to, at the end of the day, it's a fantasy, it's a sexual fantasy,
Right.
and that's what it comes out. It comes down to pornography is the same way. right? It is not the for the wolf, it is not the smell of the elk, it's about the fact that it's going to eat the elk, right? Same thing here. All of this is just is finding a way to monetize the most base of the human instincts, to take this chimera, the chimera that exists in every human's mind, and make that the dominant voice, and take over the rational element, take over the honor seeking element, right? And the way you can do it is, well, no one needs to know if I'm doing it if I do it inside my closet somewhere. Like, you don't have to go out there and procure this. You can see it, you can do it in the confines of your laptop. So you don't have to worry about the honor seeking element. The line doesn't have to exist. But the rational principle, there's a side of you that feels guilty that you do it, doesn't want you to do it. That is the rational, the angel on the shoulder that you're talking about, right? That is being just squashed in culture right now. The chimera is being pushed to the top. And now we see that turns out that leaders are the same way, right? From politicians to, most folks on the social, from social media personalities to all these dot-com billionaires, and you know all of these guys have the tyrannical constitution inside of them, and they're pushing that on society. So you can imagine this, the furthest away from the common good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary time. So when you so what is it then that brings us back to rationality? Like,
uh that's a good
because
that's a good point.
this is, I mean, actually, before you answer that question, Anish, I mean, this is really interesting. But like, Temperance is, the end of book 4, right? Book 3, sorry, right? It's just a couple
Right.
of paragraphs, but if you think about this based on what we were just talking about, like, this is actually like like a major societal issue right now, where we're all falling into the chimera multi-headed monster is leading. That's what society is leading with, right? I mean, there's, of course there's good, of course there's temperance, but it's overwhelming to
Right.
exist in society right now, where self-indulgence is everywhere. The opportunity to self-indulge is,
Right.
we're surrounded by it. I don't in thousands of years ago, were they still surrounded by as much opportunity to self-indulge? Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, you don't know. Doesn't seem it wasn't this easy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's
I mean,
access
you're
to
a credit card and a click away. You're a credit card and a click away.
yeah. No.
Right. So the great question, right, Jeremy? Again, none of this is prescriptive, but coming back to the childhood development theory of Aristotle, right? He
Yeah.
talks about this, that the self-indulgence is the most childish of faults.
Mhm.
Kids are self-indulgent because their minds haven't developed. They don't have the rational principle. The rational principle takes years to develop. As a matter of fact, we talk about debauchery in college and all of that, right? That there's a reason for that, because your frontal lobe hasn't wired till you're 25. Some people it wires early, and
Right.
those folks don't behave that way in college, right? You'd always know about that one guy who was, stay away from all this, had these highfalutin thoughts, and you're like, man, this guy's going to be, someone someday. He doesn't seem to be touched by these things that you're doing, and but those frontal lobes wire then. But most people, it takes about 25 when the frontal lobes wire. And so people do all sorts of silly things as young adults and kids. I mean, that's the time when you do it, because you don't understand the consequences of your actions. Your executive functions are not formalized yet. And so the kids have the least ability to control that, and so they are driven by their passions. The chimera is being built, and is the strongest.
Mhm.
And that's why children need direction. That's why parenting matters. That's why society matters. That's why schools matter, because you need adults who can show them the way. I'm not saying that these adults are perfect. That's not the point. But there is a way to control that chimera. And the way they do it is not through, we hear in schools, that's the right thing to do. The you know they used to have moral science or something. Now that should be one of those things. They just talk about stories where how you should be a good neighbor and how you can be a good person, and that's the right thing to do. But what they were trying to build was the lion.
Mhm.
That's the honorable thing to do. As a society, people who are seen doing the right things are honored. The ones who are seen doing the wrong things are chastised. In class, if in school, if you were the kid who was getting into behavior that wasn't right, you would be chastised for it.
Right.
And you would know that that's the wrong thing to do. It was made plain and evident. And so the child should live according to the direction of his tutor. So the appetitive element should live according to the rational principle. That's what his theory of child development is. What he's saying is you've got to show the rational principle. The right tutor has a philosophical constitution,
Mhm.
and someone with a philosophical constitution teaches the tyrannical constitution, the chimeric constitution. And because of that tutor student relationship, because of the lion of honor, the child learns just by doing, not by thinking, just by doing the actions, moves away from the chimera. And then as they mature, they understand the consequences of that action and then choose to do it. So that's now how does that apply to the rest of us who are adults? Like, I mean, it turns out there are, even in my case, it took me a long time to kind of understand these concepts.
Mhm.
I First of all, no one ever laid it out so logically for me
Right.
that it is completely natural for the chimera to be the most dominant impulse
Mhm.
to drive my behavior. And as a child, right? And then as I grew up, the honor seeking to be the most dominant one. Everything that I was doing for honor. I wanted to be the best this, the best that. I want people to tell me that I'm doing great, and I want to have all of these the the accoutrements of a good life. What you think is a good life, right? Which is not eudaimonia, which is something else altogether. The conventional good life, the house, the car, the status inside, the money that comes with it, the ability to spend vacations, photos, that kind of stuff, right? And that is the lion. And and I didn't know that. I just thought that that is most of life, that you balance the honor seeking with the appetitive side. You don't want the appetitive side to come out too much, because then you'll be dishonorable. Like, you don't indulge in sexual proclivities, because it'll affect your family life, and it'll affect honor. Like, these are the kind of things, right? And so some people fail in that, and some people succeed in it. Those who fail, they cheat, and they have whatever the consequences of that. It's like the Tiger Woods life,
Mhm.
right? Ultimate honor in golf, and then terrible, personal life. Sexual proclivity leads to complete downfall. That is every human being's struggle, right? But there's a third way, which is the hardest one, but the one that leads to the most satisfaction in life. And you can come on this path at any point. I mean, you can have the spectacular downfall of Tiger Woods, or you could have just a run of the mill midlife crisis,
Mhm.
and then find the tutor, which in this case could be Aristotle, or better yet, Socrates, right?
Mhm.
And use their rational principle to tame our chimeric and our honor seeking elements, and develop this philosophical constitution. But the rational principle controls honor, which then keeps the chimera in check.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, interestingly, I'd be curious that around, you mentioned the midlife crisis, but I think that for many of us that go through a midlife crisis, it's because that chimera comes back out. So you have success, you see success, and then you start to indulge, and then you indulge more, and then you indulge more, and then all of a sudden you've overindulged, and then you realize that you're not aligned to your values and what's important, and you have all this stuff now, and now what?
What?
This is where we find ourselves in the midlife crisis. This is where people start to say, "Hey, this isn't for me anymore." And
Right.
we've had lots of talks about that. That's um, Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just to give you like a baby step practice that Shelley and I actually decided to do, is every time. So we got into a habit of going out to eat on the weekends, like breakfast or just lunch or getting bagels or something, right? But it's, these days, back when we started that behavior, it was probably $15-$20 for two of us, or $30 maybe for four of us to go out and grab breakfast. Well,
But
now it's $80 to $100 if we're lucky.
yeah,
And in Southern California, it's more like $100 for a breakfast for four. So
yeah.
that is no longer enjoyable. And so what we've decided is, hey, every time we have that urge, like, this morning I walked my dogs and we're going to go walk the coast. It's like, let's just get muffins on the coast. And then we decided, you know what? Market. We're opening up a separate savings account. And every time we decide not to go and do that, we're going to take the money that it would have cost to do that and put it into a savings account.
Oh,
To
very nice.
see is like to start to say, hey, how much are we actually saving by acknowledging that this is what we want and we're going to choose
Right.
not to do it, and to stop the self-indulgence, which has become habits, to your point, like the DoorDash, the Grubhub. Like, it's just so easy to do these things.
Oh, absolutely. They've been. That's a great little exercise. So here's I'll tell you. So here is how you know whether you are one where one is self-indulgent or one is getting temperate, right? The self-indulgent person would be pained at the prospect of not being able to indulge in that pleasure. A temperate person is not pained for not indulging in that pleasure. So um, uh, Plato gives a better example of this than Aristotle does. Aristotle doesn't give very good real life examples,
Oh,
but Plato does. Plato says it's like this: you are invited to a dinner, and you're sitting in this big table, right? And there's a very tasty dish that is being passed around. It's in a plate, and it's being passed around from person to person, right? And you're sitting there, and the self-indulgent person will find a way somehow to find that tray as it's being passed around and get a share for them before it runs out, right? If by any means they cannot find the tray in time and it runs out, they are disappointed, they're in pain, they're annoyed, irritated, or whatever. It's like, what the heck, man, I couldn't get to the plate. Like, they're constant, their eyes are on the plate. Where's
uh-huh.
the plate? They're not indulging in the conversation, they're not necessarily having a good time at the party, they're worried about the plate. The temperate man wants to eat what's on that dish. But if the dish comes to him in time and there is something on it, he will take it. By the time the plate gets to him and it's got nothing on it, he will not feel the pain
Right.
of it. So that's that's the difference between the self-indulgent and the temperate man. The temperate man is in the moment. He's enjoying the conversation. He's enjoying whatever he's able to and partake in whatever is available to him. But if it doesn't show his way, he's not affected by it.
Great example. Easy, like that's an easy one to understand and grasp.
But you see, the temperate man didn't get there
Yeah,
just because. Now, if the temperate man doesn't like what's on the dish, and if it comes to him, he doesn't participate, he participates, that's not temperance. Temperance is that at some point there's a craving for that particular thing. But over time, with practice, you lose that craving for it.
yeah.
And what you are talking about here is that kind of an exercise. Look, there's something very pleasant about going to walking along the coast and eating a muffin. As a matter of fact, you said it, I was like, wow, that sounds awesome,
That's great, right? Yeah.
right? It does. There's something great about it. And at one point, it was so pleasurable that you would run to do it, no question. And now you're walking yourself back, and that's just one small example of what temperance could look like. But man, go to the coast, have a muffin. That doesn't make you a self-indulgent human being, but it would if that was causing problems for you, or if say you couldn't go because it was raining, you sitting curse the gods, like, I couldn't get a muffin today, like this is the worst thing ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a silly example, but if one looks at their life, there are examples of that. Like, if one likes playing golf and the weather is bad and your mood is terrible because of that, because you couldn't go, you get your round of golf in, right? That you got to ask yourself, where is that coming from?
Right.
Temperance is, you get to participate in golf. If you couldn't, so what? There are other things that I could participate. You see what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Now, so that is the difference in temperance and self-indulgence, is this pain aspect. Pain that comes because one couldn't do the pleasurable activity.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's good. That's good to clarify that. It's they experience pain by not having it.
Right. All right. I think we have spoken as or discussed as much as we could about temperance. How many minutes in are
Yeah,
we?
I think we're about 45, 50 minutes in, believe it or not. So we
Oh,
covered
wow. Okay.
uh, thoroughly. So I would say we can end here, and then we'll talk book four next episode, next session.
Yeah, that
Good.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.